I am Iain Stewart. I'm a signature member of the National Watercolor Society. I teach watercolor workshops nationally, as well as architectural illustration at Auburn University in Alabama. I'm a big fan of Stillman Birn sketchbooks, and I use them exclusively, as well as suggest them to my students. I wrote to Stillman Birn in October to inquire if there's any way to purchase their papers in larger format and in loose sheets. This video is a demonstration of how I use the alpha paper to do a full-size watercolor rendering of the Chattanooga Dome building in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Enjoy. Here's the final drawing. You'll see I've added a little shade and shadow. Stretching, I just stretch with either a masonite board or a 1/4-inch plywood using masking tape and staples. If the tape holds and I'm careful, then the final painting will have very, very little buckling and mats well, frames well, and really performs much better than other light papers that I've used. You just get a glimpse of me starting the first washes there, but basically what I'm doing is putting in areas of cool and warm. Here I am adding some more detail and starting to isolate the subject, which is the dome building itself. You'll also see that I've got some very light washes in the far background buildings. One thing that's unique about this paper is how much I can layer. So this is the first set of darks going on the foreground building, and I believe in this painting I do 4 layers at one point, and the paper holds up really well. You'll see that it dries flat, very little buckling to be noticed, and in fact I use 300 and 140 pound papers that haven't held up as well as this. You'll see here I'm using a mister to start to float in some blues for the sky. The dome seemed like it just getting lost a bit, so this is one way that I use to make things pop. So here's the second layer of darks coming on this foreground building, and you'll see the pigment is quite thick, but one of the things to keep in mind about watercolor is we know that it's going to dry a lot lighter than it looks while it's wet. Here I'm starting to add some shadow and shaping to the painting. So that's me actually sort of drawing with a brush rather than laying in white areas of color or large areas of color, and just giving small impressionist strokes to indicate windows and openings in the facade. Here we're coming in for the third layer of darks on this foreground building. That's possibly the most surprising thing that the Stillman Birn allows you to do, is you still see the glow of the paper through these darks, and it really is forgiving and allows you to build up tone in a way that really no other sketchbook I've seen allows you to. This is the 4th layer on that dark building in the foreground, and now what I'm doing is shaping, and similar to what I was doing with the dome building. You'll see I'm leaving negative space for some of the windows and painting around them, and then dropping in colors, so burnt sienna there, to vary the strength and the hue of the dark. Here's something you won't see very often. After 2 or 3 layers, I believe 3 layers, I'm still able to draw on this paper. When the paper is dry, it reacts in the same way it did when there was no pigment on it. And that's something is fairly remarkable. Just adding final details, at last count, I believe there are 5 layers in certain areas of darks. That's pretty amazing. Here, after doing all of this abusive, layering on a light paper, I'm actually going in and scrubbing and removing parts of the pigment or bits of pigment to create the illusion of reflection on a wet street. And particularly to watch where I go through that layer that is carried most of the darks. And you see I'm actually physically getting in there with a real scrubber or lifter, and I'm still able to work that paper. The unique thing about these loose sheets is it allows me to paint in the way that I would outdoors and get that freshness that I would be able to get in a sketch in my studio work. And it's been a real pleasure experimenting with this. So here's the final. I think if you look in the lower right corner, you'll see just how much this paper can take. Thank you.